Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Secret Invasion Episode 3. The brand new entry has just dropped and there's a lot of Easter eggs, things we learn, and theory times we have for what's going on. We're at the halfway point of the series now too, and I'd love to hear what you guys' thoughts on the show are, and if you're invested in things going forward. Please drop a thumbs up too, and also make sure you subscribe for our weekly breakdowns on the series. Now last week saw Nick being at his lowest point. After watching Maria die in his arms, he went off the rails with Talos and was also kicked out of the government by number one Skrull suspect Rhodey. Left with nowhere to turn, he finally decided to return home, which, final comeback, and it's here where we learned a crazy revelation. Turned out that Nick had actually married one of the first Skrulls to come to the planet, and he walked back in like Adam 22's wife with his wedding ring left in the house. Either way, the pair danced out to try a little tenderness, and it became clear he had a lot invested in the war. That takes us in episode 3, which is titled Betrayed. Beginning at the power plant, we watch Beto questioning the Resistance mission, and it's clear this guy was just looking for a home, somewhere for food, a way to watch heavy spoilers until the good channels release their videos, and just lie low. However, he's been drafted into a war that now sees him on the front line. Taking on Royal Naval Service officer IDs, we watch as they head out, whilst Gravik gives a talk in front of the machine in the core of the plant. Here he's invited in the council members, and he discusses the next part in Skrull evolution whilst the plan falls into place.
Members of the council. Glad you could make it on short notice.
In case you missed our last video, the council members riff slightly off an idea that was brought up in the comics. Though most of the Skrulls focused their efforts on imitating superheroes, they did spend time mimicking world leaders and celebs. We had a big 2-page spread where they appeared on screens everywhere, looking like politicians, actors, and famous YouTubers. I told you he's a Skrull!
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Airy!
But stuff like that didn't really get too much attention because, again, like I said, they were focused on the soups. Kind of funny though how stuff's flipped around for the show, with them mainly focusing on world leaders and not mimicking the Avengers. Now there's lots of theories that Rhodey's been one the entire time, but personally I don't know if it's just too obvious. I would love a little meta joke with Terrence Howard, but if Rhodey's been out of the running for a while, then I feel that it kind of robs his character development. So if that's the case, I think him getting swapped out would be quite recent, though we do know that Skrulls work amongst his people. Now we can see that the Splinter Cell are off going to a British submarine, and this is so that they can start a war. Even though there's a million Skrulls, there's still billions of us, and thus the best way to clear the board is to have us take out each other. Humans warring with one another is one of our biggest weaknesses, and it's something that Gravik later talks about when he's with Talos. He and his warriors have been carrying out attacks in the world whilst posing as rival groups, and this is to raise tension amongst the human race. Key nations like Russia, the US, and so on, all of them can be places that will happily go to war with each other, and once this is in place, they can just come in and claim the planet for themselves. Now right from the off, Gravik talks about another aspect of his plan, which is making Super Skrulls. It's something we talked about last week, and a lot of people on Twitter were quite annoyed that they'd done things the wrong way round. You see, it's rare Twitter gets annoyed, but you see, in the comics, the Super Skrull initially imitated the powers of the Fantastic Four, but them not being present in this universe, they've had to go about things differently. We do know, however, that there are 4 specimens being used, which are Groot's DNA, a Frost Beast, Extremis, and the hand left behind by Cull Obsidian. These 4 elements are of course riffing on the 4 powers provided by the first family, though they can't be used here because they don't exist yet. Now we'll be talking about something in regards to them later on, and potentially we might get a tease to them. Now like I said, people are getting a bit angry about this, but I think the MCU's never really adopted things one-to-one from the comics. Hank Pym didn't make Ultron in the MCU, Age of Ultron's nothing like the comic book, and even though Infinity War has a couple of moments from Gauntlet, they are vastly different. Secret Invasion itself is a massive moment in the comic books too, but it's a far cry from the spy thriller that we're getting here. So I don't think Super Skrulls will be the same thing either, and I'm kind of viewing Gravik's plan as a prototype rather than the final version. Maybe when the Fantastic Four are fully in the universe we'll see something closer to the comics, but this is what it is for what we have right now. Anyway, with Gravik being a new character, they can kind of twist things from the original Super Skrull, whose name's Clarke. Born on the world of Tanax 4, he was originally shunned due to the amount of defeats that he and his warriors racked up. Constantly losing to the humans, the Skrulls then devised a way to even the odds by giving the Skrulls the powers of the Fantastic Four. In the MCU, the Skrulls of course lost their war with the Kree, and thus they've also had to find a way to match up with the Avengers. Anyway, Clarke was given all the powers, which included the strength of the Thing, pyrokinetic powers, invisibility, and the power to stretch his power to stretch out. Now these are sort of mirrored in the samples we saw, with the strength being attributed to the Frost Beasts in Cull, and Groot and Extremis providing the stretching and the fire. Retaining his shape-shifting abilities, Clarke became a powerful assassin, and he then paved the way for the new Skrull Empire. I think that's going to be the case with Gravik too, and Clarke's first battle actually saw the heroes having to retreat. He's able to overpower all the characters in the series as well, and I think going forward that he could become a big threat. Now after the title sequence, we cut to New York in 1998. This takes place 1 year after the intro last week, and it's now 3 years since the events of Captain Marvel. Meeting with Varra, we watch as she hands over some intel to Fury, and the name Dreykov is mentioned. This was the villain Black Widow, and he was played by none other than Ray Winston. Black Widow actually started off in 1995, and we had the big escape scene to kickstart the movie. Clearly, Fury's been looking into what's going on, and in many ways the sleeper cell in the US could reflect the Skrulls themselves. In the comics, Gaia was someone who was a sleeper cell agent too, just like Natasha, and she built a family on Earth whilst carrying out missions. She and her agent husband Claire raised a family on the planet, and they were put in place to keep tabs on everyone on Earth. In the past, Fury was investigating people infiltrating the country, whilst we know in the present he's investigating people infiltrating the planet. Fury and Varra hit it off, but he starts to question who she's chosen to look like, and I do think we'll find this out later down the line, but let me know your best theories below. There was a leak going around that this was actually Fury's original wife, but she unfortunately had cancer, and then Varra took over and decided they were basically going to try and make it work. I'm bringing that up now because it doesn't seem like it's the case. However, I do think it's worth discussing because that was one of the rumours going around. Now, the de-aging, I don't think gets enough credit with this stuff, and yeah, fair enough, Samuel L. Jackson hasn't aged, but both of them here look absolutely great. If you've watched the new Indiana Jones movie or The Flash, then you'll know stuff can be a bit hit and miss, with the former being better there, but in this case, they've really knocked it out the park. Anyway, in the present, we see how the Skrulls have started to rock the boat, with the FXN people suggesting World War III is coming. Priscilla or Varra suggests that it's poison, and it's a criticism that's often levied against opinion-based news. Saying he's retired, Fury's now taking up revenge, and it's clear that he only really wants to ask her about Gravik. Now going off this scene, you can tell Varra cares greatly about Fury, but it doesn't feel like that feeling's reciprocated. The snap has massively changed him, and during this time she grieved for him for 5 years. Even when he returned though, he was never really present, and you can start to see why he then fled to Saber. It's a great scene, I think, and they do so much with it to show Fury never really had anything keeping him on Earth. Now Priscilla is also going to be something Gravik can weaponize, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it was her who introduced the character to Nick in episode 2. We know from the trailers that Nick will be returning to that location in Brixton, and we've also had shots with Gaia and his wife back to back showing things do tie together. Now obviously the big elephant in the room at the moment is why she gets shot at the end. However, we have seen from the trailers that the shots that haven't been used of her yet, so she's clearly not dead. My guess is that she's going to survive this gunshot wound, though there may be something else going on which we'll talk a bit more about in due time in just a bit. Either way, he clearly doesn't trust her, and this is mirrored in Gravik's feelings for Gaia. The thing with the Skrulls is that their entire race is built on deception and lies, and it makes trusting each other absolutely impossible. The thing is that they do betray each other as well, and that notion obviously ties into the title of this entry. Now it's tea time. So one thing I've been thinking here is, can a Skrull shapeshift into another Skrull? Now what I mean by that is, what if Talos is pretending to be Gravik, who's pretending to be Gaia, pretending to be Talos, pretending to be Talos? What? We do see that Skrulls can all shift to look like Gravik, and there might not even be an original version of him. Now there's just this idea that it's not all as it seems, and when you look at the trailers, there are clues that people might be combating things in smarter ways than we know. Rewatching the teaser, we see Fury come down in his ship that then opens up and shows him looking mean. This was obviously referencing Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it's how he appeared in that first episode, right? If you compare those moments side by side, you'll notice that Nick's actually wearing different clothes, with the one we haven't seen yet being more like his classic look. Now there are other possibilities here, and potentially he returned to Saber to go and grab his gear. They always do this thing with the downtrodden and out of step heroes where they get back in the swing of things and return in their old gear looking like you when you go out on a night out and force your old earring back through. This ship might just be something that he uses to get around him, but episode 1 showed that it seemed to just go back and forth between Earth and the satellite. Now when you're fighting an enemy that can look like anyone, you might also employ the same tactics, and it's possible that the Nick we've seen is actually a Skrull himself. He has used them before, and Saber itself has got Skrull agents on it, which we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. Now it's also possible that he might be an LMD.
Why?
Yes, it's something we've been saying for a couple of weeks now, and LMDs were used heavily in the comics. Known as life model decoys, these androids perfectly mimicked someone, and the one in control used them for very dangerous missions. Before the events of Secret Invasion, Nick actually went to Maria and warned her that he suspected something was off about the government, and he said that, "If I suspect something's off about you, love, I'm gonna shoot you dead." Too soon? Now what he also did was that he's told her to start using LMDs and said that if you have a funny feeling in your gut, then just send them in instead. Nick could be doing this here, or it could be absolutely nothing, and he may just go back to Saber and arm up and move out.
I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in.
Anyway, that's in it. You time.
Shut the fuck up, his theories are so fucking stupid.
Now Gravik lands in London with Gaia, which is where we learn Talos has called for a parley. Meeting about his daughter, he of course knows she's in a lot of danger due to her basically feeding him intel and telling him what's going on. Gravik is aware that the police arrived far too soon last week, and though she said it was broken, he's clearly not buying it. This leads to him shooting her at the end, and I think this paranoia might be what leads to his downfall. Now this all takes place in London's National Portrait Gallery, which is where we see a big showdown between Talos and Gravik. Talos is the old leader, but this series has shown how much his forces have now gone and abandoned him. He goes there alone, whereas we see in the case of Gravik that he has people in every single place. They all wear his face too, and for all intents and purposes carry not only his luck, but everything he stands for. We get a sort of I am Spartacus scene later on with them standing up appearing as him, ready to show how much the Skrulls are now everything he embodies. Now the gallery's running an exhibit called The Faces of Freedom, which contains several portraits of leaders renowned for their historic conflicts. This includes Winston Churchill, and it of course speaks to the war that's currently going on. However, I think the use of the word freedom shows what the Skrulls think of themselves, and they see themselves fighting for freedom, so they no longer have to remain hidden. This location has clearly been chosen for a reason though, and the eyes kind of just follow you around the room, almost making you feel even more paranoid. Now the pair initially talk in front of a giant painting, and this is Statesman of World War I by Sir James Guthrie. This was actually made in 1930, 9 years before the Second World War started, and it chronicled the leaders of Parliament all coming together. Gravik sees them as just posing for pictures, as these older men never fought in the conflicts themselves, and instead they sent young men off to fight and die in the front line. This somewhat reflects Gravik and Nick, due to the latter being an older man that sent the Skrulls off to spy for him. Now I might not have my facts right on this, but I'm sure this painting was also put in place to give the idea that we should be careful when entering wars. World War I cost countless lives, and it was such a devastating conflict for the country. However, 9 years later, after the painting was completed, the Second World War started, which was of course also tragic too. I think this mirrors how the pair lived through the Kree-Skrull War, and they could be walking into something that could potentially bring their people to extinction. Gravik's high on sugar, he's going crazy. Now, Skrulls have different diets to humans, which we saw demonstrated by the length of time Beto had gone without eating. He had that lovely Skrull fruit in the car, but it's also symbolic of how they're rejecting humanity. The council had integrated themselves and were eating our food, just like how Priscilla was chopping things up last week. Talos even has a full English later on, and it's enough to bring a tear to me old British heart. Now Gravik on the other hand rejects this, and he has full cups of sugar, which strangely my uncle used to do, and he tended to sniff them off tables, which was a bit weird when I look back at it. Now Nick Fury had his big scenes against other actors last week, and this one feels like it's Talos's. I love this moment in the gallery, and it could end up being Talos' last true stand against this villain. I get the feeling that Talos is probably going to die in the series, and we have had hints towards his popping up at certain points in the trailer. Now this is just me guessing, because there's not been anything to confirm it, but we do know that the convoy attack on President Ritson is coming soon. This is a shot from the teaser where Talos looks badly injured, and another one where Gaia leans over someone weeping. I'm guessing this could be for her dad, though they did put it in the trailer, which is a bit obvious looking back at it. so maybe it's Beto or something, but I think making Gravik responsible for her parents' deaths would add a lot to her character. Again, Gaia clearly doesn't die like what we see at the end, and potentially she may have taken the Super Skrull serum, though that is slightly unlikely. A huge thank you to everyone for following the videos and channel, and if you want to support us and get something back, we've just launched a Secret Invasion / Pulp Fiction t-shirt. That's over at our merch store, shopzeroedition.com, and look at it, we've got Nick Fury as Jules, yeah, and Talos, he's doing bloody John Travolta, Vincent Vega, I think it was. Now, huge thank you to everyone who's got one so far. Much love, and thank you for supporting the Spoiler Invasion.
That's what this is all about, is it? You're gonna take our people to the edge of extinction with a war with the humans.
All these miscreants know is murder.
Now, Talos and Gravik have a great back and forth where they argue their points, but they've seen firsthand what war can do when the pair both lost their loved ones when fighting against the Kree. This has had a major effect on them, though both sides see the conflict from different angles. Gravik's parents died alongside him whilst fighting in the battles, and during his escape, he only made it out by the skin of his teeth. Due to him just being a child, he's been inspired by his parents dying on the front line, and instead views their deaths as something to be admired.
Sorry to hear about your parents.
They died a brilliant death.
This is why he has no qualms about pushing the Skrulls to the brink of extinction in a war with the humans, as he doesn't view death as something one should fear. Now, on the flip side of this, Talos got to keep his family, and he made his home on Earth with them. However, it's Gravik's conflict with the human that's caused him to lose both his wife and daughter, and he knows his pain's something that will be shared by others if they go down this path. Now, Gravik sees us as just murdering one another and being selfish. Last week he even said how he liked dogs compared to us and looked down on the council for trying to be human.
All dressed up in the man's finery, drinking the man's wine, playing the man's game, using the man's fork and knife.
His whole ideology seems to be that Skrulls don't kill each other, which is something he made clear at that same meeting.
You go in peace, sister. You'll not be harmed.
However, he had no qualms about it later on, but he had this murder carried out in the woods away from the eyes of his people. Shows what he's really like, and he's probably more human than he'd like to admit. We all have our bad sides, can get consumed with hate, do things like not liking the video and so on, but we have our good sides too. Now this to me is represented in Talos, who offers the opposite argument to Gravik. Talos knows that though humans turn on each other, that when we're threatened as a species, we'll put our differences to the side and then work together. It's this ethos that formed the Avengers, and it's going to lead to more Skrull deaths.
They're at their most formidable when they're threatened.
Now, Talos says that if stuff continues, then he's just going to snitch. Gravik thinks that this will lead to a full-on genocide of the Skrulls, but Talos will show people that his side is different. Just like humans, there are good and bad guys, and Talos is willing to take first blood against Gravik to show that he's serious. Now we see that Gravik uses the power of Extremis to heal the wounds, showing that he's already gone ahead with his experiments. Again, potentially, if Gaia has taken this, then she can heal from that wound, which could explain how she's back in the later entries. Now when Talos goes outside, there's a girl who raises her hand, and I was wondering if this was the same one that had the ball in episode 1. I don't think it is, but either way, Gaia gives Talos a phone with a Neptune note on it, and in a nice little bit of continuity, we can see the guy she posed as further down the street. He's on the phone, which he wouldn't have if he was the one who just gave it over, and therefore we can surmise that this was actually Gaia. Hope that makes sense, what I've just said, because it's super early and I'm a bit run down, but you know, we're fighting our own fight in this spoiler invasion, so yeah, thanks for sticking with your boy.
See you, chump.
Anyway, Nick and Talos get a great scene together after their fallout on the train the day before. Fury now has a lead on a Skrull who's high up in the US government, but man's gonna have to say these words first.
Help me, Talos, because I'm useless without you.
Such a funny exchange with him, and I know that the show's getting slated for not having much comedy, but yeah, I prefer the jokes being driven by the characters rather than those Marvel projects where we get the writers clearly sitting down and being like, let's write a crap joke. Anyway, Neptune's revealed to be the submarine, and we see that Sonya's discovered his bug. Adding an eye patch to it, this is a cool little joke to time with Fury. Obviously, you get it, you're a smart guy. But interestingly, we have other shots from the trailer of her examining this, so potentially it may turn up again. I kinda get the feeling that she'll put a contact lens back on it and then have a meeting with the guy, and this will allow Fury to oversee the entire thing. However, this shot could be a deleted scene from episode 1 or 2, which she discovered that he'd been spying on her. Either way, she suspects that Tony Kern tipped off Gravik, and interestingly he's appeared in the franchise before. Curran played Boar back in Thor the Dark World, and it is possible that this is where he got the look. We first saw the pair talking back in episode 1, and this was the guy in the hologram that appeared to Fury. She's clearly trying to flush out the traitor in her own ranks, and this is something that's reflected in Gravik, who's trying to get Gaia. At this point, we learn about Commodore Robert Fairbanks, who pretty much takes up the third act of the episode. On the way to his house, Talos talks about how he doesn't understand why humans care for dogs, and this is kind of an opposite to Gravik. Last week he said that he actually likes dogs, and I tell you, if Skrulls don't like dogs, a lot of them, that can bloody sod off. Now we find out how much the Skrulls have really helped Fury, and the man pretty much owes his entire career to them. They've kind of been cast to the side though, with Fury not really acknowledging how much they've helped him. Obviously, it's offering some social commentary, and again, it ties back to the painting that we saw at the art gallery. Those in the picture are the ones who gained fame from the war when it was more than simply them carrying out the battles. Now, sneaking into Fairbanks' home, their cover's quickly blown, and we see that Skrulls make up almost every unit of his home. Fairbank tries to lure Fury up by posing as Talos, but he messes up and calls him Nick. As we learned in Captain Marvel, nobody calls him this, but yeah, I'm sure last week people did. But it might have been Nicholas, but I'm looking at you, Rhodey. Look, I'll have to double check, but in the end it gives him away instantly. This is why the memory program that the Skrulls have at the plant's so important, as it means that they can't get caught out by silly mistakes. Obviously though, they wouldn't know that no one calls Fury Nick, and it's clear that even with all the info, they still can get caught out. In the comics, this was a big thing that gave them away, and they actually used Secret Invasion as a way to explain some out of character moments that happened in Civil War. Now, Fury obviously gloats about saving his life because the whole "we did this" speech, but tensions rise when we see the plan falling into place. Fairbank is loyal to Gravik, but Samuel L. Jackson channels his Jules interrogation methods that he had in Pulp Fiction. Super tense because the sub could launch an attack on the UN, and to make matters worse, Talos kills Fairbank. This is because he taunts him about Gaia, and it was clear with Gravik that this was a very sore point. Now in the sub, we actually get up close and personal with the leading Skrull agent, and we know that this character is called Xerxu. He actually pulls directly from the comics, and at one point he even posed as Diabolic. Now Talos calls Gaia directly, and we watch as she turns against her people and finally steps out the shadows. As she rushes through the compound, we get not only the council members, but also the real Fairbank, and later one of the scientists that was working on the Super Skrulls. Gaia figures out the code word Zachary, and as we learn, this was the name of his son. Initially, I thought when he said Zachary that was the Skrull's name, but yeah, nice little reveal, even if it's on the nose. Either way, Gaia has now compromised herself, and we watch as she heads out into the night. Nice little touch here is that she doesn't turn the headlight on her bike, and this is so that she can't be spotted in the dark. However, the lack of a guard on the door does kinda give it away, and we learn that Gravik's used the plane as a way to flush out the traitor. Gravik resorts to shooting her, again going back to how he'll kill Skrulls, and this symbolises how he could lead them to extinction. It's very similar how they killed Maria Hill, but yeah, I did feel like Marvel's ruined it because of what we've seen in the trailers. They did the same thing with Fury showing up at the start of the Marvels too, and I kinda wish that the marketing would just hold things back. Now we see as Vara heads out and withdraws a gun from a safety deposit box, and we learn she's been in contact with Gravik all along. Again, I think she'll be used as a tool by him, and she's probably getting called in as a way to draw Fury out. Whether it works or not, we don't know, because he seems like he doesn't really care. And maybe you should have shapeshifted into Naomi Campbell in the 90s.
Goddamn, in the 90s, goddamn.
Now that wraps up the episode, and we're kinda heading into potential leaky and spoiler stuff now, so if you don't want to know anything, then turn off now. The first of these is more of a theory, whereas the second's a full-on leak, so enter the next part of the video at your own peril. Now the first part of this builds off the back of an image that leaked around the time of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Originally it was said that the studio shot scenes for the film that in the end would reveal Doctor Doom was in the MCU. These were scrapped, but some apparent concept art came out, and it ended up showing a very specific scene. Looking at it now, a lot of people have said the person Doom's facing could in fact be Gravik, and that this scene might have set up the events happening in the show. Whether that's the case or not, there's been a lot of talk about Doctor Doom recently, because Ben Mendelsohn gave a hilarious interview talking about the character.
Victor Von Doom is the greatest single character in the entire MCU. bar none. He's the first character to ever have a substantive backstory that we could understand and that gives context both in the old traditional Cold War minor state kind of idea and also as someone who really got disfigured, got his family taken from him, and then takes all that, takes his skill, has the wounds, has to wear the mask and continues on to do what he does. The Fantastic Four suck, right? They suck, full stop. They're sort of like Marvel's first attempt to make a group, and they suck, right? That's why the X-Men rule and Fantastic Four suck. However, the Fantastic Four birthed the Skrulls and they birthed Doctor Doom. So while they suck, they also gave rise to the greatest two villain groups and single villain ever. Now, you can keep anyone else. Give me Doctor Doom against anyone because Victor suffers and you will now suffer. You know, that's why it's a no-brainer. Give me Victor Von Doom. Give me the success from that lame-ass group of like, flame on, flame on.
In case you don't know, Doctor Doom's the villain in Secret Wars, and there's been theories that they might replace Kang with him because of what's happening with Jonathan Majors. I don't know if that will happen, but with Fantastic Four coming soon, the inclusion of Super Skrulls and so on, they may tease towards them coming in the show. The cast for that will probably be announced very soon, but hey, like I said, we are gonna see. Anyway, that's the video. Yeah, ended on a crap note there, but obviously let me know your thoughts on the episode below. I know the show's also short of the 1 million viewer mark from episode 1, so I'd also love to hear your thoughts on the MCU and Disney Plus in general. I am working on a video talking about it, so I'd love to hear your opinions, and yeah, let me know if you think the MCU's kind of dwindling into nothing. Now, if you want to support the channel for as little as 99 cents a month, then please click the join button below, and as a thank you, you'll get early access to videos every week. If you want something else to watch, we've got a video on screen right now, and hopefully I'll see you over there right after this. If not, enjoy the rest of your week. Hope to see you back for the next one. You take care of yourself and have a good weekend. By the way, I've been Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.